And like I said, with the recording, if you did miss the first one or any of the subsequent ones, I'm recording them and putting up on my website so that they will be available for you to watch another time if you missed the live version. All right, so we'll begin just by getting centered. So just taking a couple of deep breaths to bring your awareness into you. And allowing yourself to leave at the door, leave outside the room, any extra thoughts, anything you don't need, any to-do lists, distractions, to call yourself into your own commitment, presence, to show up today for yourself. And you can imagine a light or a sphere or some kind of shield, if you wish, around yourself to hold space for you, showing up as you in your highest expression. And you can just open your heart to yourself and thank yourself for being here today, for carving out this time. And know that with this shield that you've created around yourself, that anything that doesn't resonate or doesn't feel like you want to, bring it into your system, it will simply stay outside that shield. So dropping away from your own energy system. And yet anything that you do want to bring through will come right through with the beautiful filter of your shield. And you can imagine the weight of your physicality in your chair, grounding you to the earth as she fully supports you, your unique expression, who you are in this life. And so holding space for you to be exactly as you are, you can set an inward intention of what you want to receive from this particular class, what you want to receive. And as the person bringing forth the information for this class, I invite you to open your heart to me as I open my heart to you, as this becomes that conduit in which we remember our unity. And so you can breathe in an affirming yes and bring your awareness back to this group in this particular class today. And welcome. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, and that will change your Zoom. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Let's go back. All right. Trying to figure out the correct screen. There we go. All righty. So welcome, everyone. This is my class that I call Rise. It is based on a talk I gave, I think it was 2017. I don't remember the specifics. I do remember my husband was there and we were trying to do a live Facebook when Facebook was fairly new at live, and it didn't work. So nonetheless, the information is still useful, and I thought it would be great to offer it since there were 12 key elements to this energy that I am bringing through to align with your soul purpose or to live a soul-led life. And so by bringing one each month, I thought that would be a great way to share this information. And so it will be the fourth Monday of every month, same time, 6 p.m. California time. And the third Monday in December, because we don't want to mess with our holidays there. And so each element will be shared and focused on at each class. And in each class, you will gain insights about your inherent gifts and purpose. Now, they will be generic, because I don't necessarily have time to give you information each individually. But given that you've been called to this, I'm pretty clear I'll be able to support you in that way. Guidelines for coming back into alignment and tools to implement during your spiritual unfoldment. Oops. These are being recorded, as I've said. So if you are missing out on any of the ones I've done, I've only done one so far, or in the future, they will be recorded and put on my website. And so you would go to my website and look for the word learn, drop down to where it says classes and talks, and you will find the recording as well as the resources that are available. And this classes being in all the classes will be recorded as long as I remember. There have been times that I have totally forgot, but rarely does that happen. If you call in, everybody's going to be muted, but if you call in, you can also push *6 to be able to speak. And same with raising your hand. If you have any questions, it's really going to be tricky for me to monitor, everyone, as well as myself and the screen and all that. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand, and across the bottom of the Zoom, there's the little thing that says raise hand. If you're calling, you would press *9 to raise your hand. And I will be including resources in the chat. So I will go ahead and do that. So always, whether you're on your mobile device or on the big screen, if you see the numbers show up, then that's a chat message. Try not to use chat unless you are trying to address me, and I'll try to figure out how to manage this all. Anyway, but in general, I'll be sharing information through chat that you will include live links that you can click on. It'll open another screen, and then you can save them. All right. My name is Veronica Lee. I am a metaphysician through and through. I was raised with all this woo-woo stuff. My mother was a hippie and a metaphysician who discovered metaphysics when she was a late teen. And so when I was a little one, I was with her at all of these, strange happenings, and learning how to, hold my hands over people for energy. I learned how to visualize myself getting well, and so on. I'm a natural intuitive, and I was born highly awake, a spiritual teacher and intuitive and mentor for over 15 years. I've been a speaker and writer, and mostly writing for Om Times Magazine, with international reach. I'm a transformational visionary whose focus is on empowering others. I am a mother of 4 young adults, and unfortunately, my husband did pass away in 2018. And that's why I've sort of been underground for a few years, because I was caregiving for him through his terminal illness. So, rise. The 12 key elements to align with your soul purpose are really going to be a slow rise, so it's not just rise, it's rise, right? And so I have 3 R's, 3 I's, 3 S's, and 3 E's. And the first element was recognize your true self. What we're going to focus on today is remember your purpose. The other elements are renew your commitment, instigate change, illuminate your intentions, implement your intuition, separate from unsupportive patterns, seek support, surround self, show up and step out, embody and empower, evolve consciousness, and enjoy life and being you. All right, so we are going to go into, I'm going to just check my, okay, sorry about that. Sometimes people will, what's it called? Send me a text if they can't get in, but I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so key element number 2, remember your purpose. So just briefly, I'm going to go stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone, and anybody who is on, you can either put in the chat saying, you know, I remember my purpose, or I don't remember my purpose, or raise your hand if you feel like this is really what you're being called to do right now, is to remember your purpose. So give me a show of hands. Yeah. So we've been awakening for a long time. And one of the main things that I'm seeing is that people are really getting pushed right now to step into who they are and to remember why they're here and to start acting in some way to create and move toward that purpose. All right, so I'll go back to sharing my screen. So the first thing I want to say, and this can be slightly controversial, is you incarnated for experience. And I want to bring that to you in a way that is more neutral. Many times people who have any kind of new age metaphysical background will often talk about we're here for lessons. I was taught that, you know, my mom taught me at a very young age, oh yes, you know, you've had many incarnations and you come back, and I'm like, boy, I must be a slow learner if I have to keep coming back to get more lessons, right? But you incarnated for experience, which brings it more toward neutrality, because the truth is, well, if we go back to this idea of remember who you are, that you are God incarnated. You are source expressing as you. And if you are all that is of God consciousness, there is nothing to learn. The only thing God may have wanted, or source, or whatever you want to call it, divine, was to experience something other than itself and to just kind of have this fun experience. And so I'm not saying that life is pointless or anything, because think of all the things we do that are purely for the experience, right? And so this is the essence of what you're here to do. So that does not negate having a purpose. It just gives you a bigger picture. Your essence is joy, and therefore it is a fundamental part of your purpose. One of the trickiest things about moving toward this idea or area of purpose is that oftentimes we think that it's A, singular, and B, that we have to do it in order to be so-called fulfilled or, you know, on track or doing something right. And I'm going to come back to each of these, but I do want to kind of give you a picture of them as I go. And before you incarnated, you made soul agreements. And most likely, if you are here and attracted to this group, it was to support in some way our collective awakening. So again, you can give a thumbs up or raise your hand or show me in some way that you believe that you are partly here to help with the collective consciousness, help awaken in some way. Yes. And so what's happening is, you know, you were probably, you know, having a feeling of this earlier in your life. And then you go to like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't really deal with this right now. And maybe you do your own thing. And then you might weave back into, oh yeah, here it is. I'm being reminded I have to support this whole, you know, process of all of us awakening. And then you might go back to, you know, your own life, etc. But the pressure is on, and things have been getting more intense, with the whole COVID thing and whatever else is going on, because it is time for us to really step into who we've come here to be and to share. Now, Erica, I don't know if you have a question. Do you want to ask a question at this point, or were you raising your hand to show your agreement? You can unmute yourself or put your hand down, either one. All right, so I'll go back to sharing the screen. And this is where, these two, purpose and gifts, are related. You have a multitude of inherent gifts and desires. Now, I want to speak to desires for just a second. If God is all that is, all powerful, all knowing, right? All loving, why would there be any purpose to incarnating at all, or to changing form, or to experiencing itself? And if you feel into it, it's kind of about desire. There was a want. It's like, it could have been as simple as of, why not? Let's give this a try. But there was an energy of desire, of want. So having a want, having a desire, which is interestingly related to that third chakra, to that place of our will, is inherent to movement, to moving forward, and to being incarnated. So for example, you incarnated because you wanted to be here. You wanted some kind of experience. And as well, your gifts are inherent to who you are. So if you've had many lifetimes, which many times old and ancient souls have been there, done that, and probably not just this, 3D human realm, but other realms as well, those gifts travel with you. Okay. So we know that we have our 5 senses, seeing, smelling, touching, on the physical, but on the metaphysical, we have those same gifts. And the difference is we just haven't been made aware of them in some cases, or we haven't mastered them, but it doesn't mean they're not there. So you have these multi-dimensional gifts from other lifetimes, as well as your own physical senses, as well as your own metaphysical senses, right? And so all of those are part of your being. They're undeniably part of your being. And the question is, how much do you pay attention and let them lead you? So again, in the chat, I would love to hear and have you maybe put your if you think there's a particular gift, your strongest gift is, and I'll go through them briefly, and you can use what I've said, or just, if you think of something on your own. So clairvoyance is clear seeing, clairaudience is clear hearing, right? Clairsentience is clear feeling, and it could even be kind of emotional, but often we call that empathy, or somebody's an empath. And then there's claircognizance. Now, claircognizance is one that many really awake people have, and people who are old souls, and those who are really good at just sort of knowing, but it's also quite tricky because they may not always notice it, because it's hard to discern that little hit you just got with your own thoughts. But that it feels and looks like just a picture, a complete picture. And it's sort of like, I don't know what I know, but I know what I know, right? It's that kind of a sense. So share in the chat what you think your, strongest gifts are. And the other thing is, those are metaphysical. I will also say that there's the gift of communication, right? There's the gift of being heart-centered. My husband was absolutely heart-centered, right? And sometimes that can almost feel a little bit tricky. So most of our gifts are going to be sort of hidden and protected by some kind of, let's say, shield, right? And sometimes that shield may start to get a little bit hardened, and we think, oh gosh, this person's really kind of mean or cold-hearted, or they're really edgy, or maybe that happens to us. But when we look at anything that's like a wound or something harsh in our system, if we just turn that over, that will often reveal the gift, because what we've done to protect it is we've kind of shielded it in a very intense way. And then sometimes it starts to, I won't say decay, but starts to like almost like become too much, it becomes a cage that we lock ourselves in, right? So we have feelings, sensing, empathetic, clairaudience, empathetic, and a hardened shield. Yes. So this idea of our gifts is that if we are good communicators, that will often lead us to working with people. And if we're very claircognizant, we might see situations and be able to express with people, maybe reflect back to them what their needs are. If we are empaths, now I think so many of us are empaths, and this is a tricky one as well. We often, as children, this is very typical, we take in an experience and feel other people's heaviness, other people's pain and suffering. Oftentimes it's our parents when we're little, and we internalize that. We take that in, not because we want to feel bad about ourselves, but in the reality is we want to help somebody. We want to help heal our parents. So we take in their pain, their sadness, and our hope is to transmute it, to turn it around, and then give them back the happiness, right? To heal what's going on in them. And so that's how many empaths start. And what happens is they don't know how to change the feeling for somebody else and give it back to them, even though that's the intention, because that's not what they're really supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to take on other people's stuff, but rather being an empath helps you empathize with them. And as you mature, to stay neutral and hold space for them so that they can transform their stuff if they are so willing, right? So those are the pictures of the different senses and such. Okay. And then the last of, obviously we can go on and on with, but this is just a truncated list, as this is a little truncated 1-hour class. Your purpose is to be true to your soul. So what happens many times is we come in, we start doing life, we do everything we're supposed to do, or we think we're supposed to do. And then pretty soon we often find ourselves sort of stuck or trapped or unhappy. And we're looking around going, wait a minute, I've done everything right. I went to the right college. I did the, things I was supposed to do. I married the right person or not, and got a divorce because I didn't. So I want to try to find myself. But what happens is we end up hitting oftentimes a wall, because that wall is trying to say, hey, it's time to slow down and really come into who you are. And this is what's happening for so many people right now. And COVID, in essence, kind of did that. It made us sort of isolate, be in our own little timeout in our own little world and go, okay, now what am I going to do? And for some people, because it was work and finance related, like something got triggered, oftentimes crisis brings us to our knees and brings us to a place of this awakening and coming into who we are here to be. So I'll pause here and I will share some resources. So any questions about anything so far? Any questions about, anything I've shared, any processes that, you would like some clarity on? I'm going to share in the chat the resources that I'm talking about. So there are some awesome articles in here and some radio interview that talks about, is there a price you pay for going against your purpose, etc. Don't need to click on them or do anything with them now. But any questions so far? Raise your hand or just unmute yourself before I continue. So maybe with the reactions, you can give me a thumbs up if this is clear and if you are understanding and following along. All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. All right, so in the process of our awakening and of remembering our purpose, I want to give you some insights. So I said I would give insights on your gifts and your purpose, guidelines to return into, come back into alignment, and tools to support you. So the insights I've already shared, and I do tend to speak very quickly. In essence, I just tune in, information comes, I try to be as clear as possible, but the information is pretty intense a lot of times. And it's so, let's say, it kind of hits so many different areas. It's like everything's related that I try to explain it as clearly as possible, but it can get a little bit, anyway. So in terms of your gifts and your purpose, what I want to share with you is that many times, I'm going to share a couple things here. We often want a purpose or feel like we want to know our purpose because we are struggling with our worthiness, right? And so by deciding or figuring out or feeling that, oh, this is my purpose, we can then so-called start doing it, and then we can start to feel valid, right? And the reality is you are valid and worthy no matter what. There is nothing that keeps you from being worthy. So when you incarnated for experience, because this 3D planet is fairly dense and fairly, the people who've agreed for this 3D earthly experience had a collective agreement that says, hey, we want to do life this way, right, on this planet. But one of the agreements was to believe in unworthiness. And so when you incarnated, you basically not only drank, the forgetfulness potion, and so that you would forget that you are God incarnated, but you also agreed to the belief in your unworthiness. What also happened most likely to really sink that belief in is you incarnated to situations or parents or had things happen to you that really locked in and affirmed for you, for that belief, that you are somehow unworthy, right? And so then it really is like, no, I really am, because my mom told me that growing up, or this happened to me, or whatever the story is. And so the game, if you want to call it that, or the shift in consciousness is to come back to remembering our inherent worthiness. Now, this is really talking about key element number one, but where purpose comes into play is that many times people want that purpose because of that feeling of unworthiness. Now, they can work together, but oftentimes you have to believe in your worthiness to some degree before the purpose really becomes more clear. And what I want to say in terms of the difference between purpose and service is that sometimes purpose comes like through us. And when we align with our, highest self and our greatest expression, it simply comes through us no matter what we do. Then there's service, in which, you might support somebody. If you think about any field that is service oriented, doing somebody, serving food, or a doctor, it doesn't matter what that service is. We call them essential workers, but it doesn't matter what that service is. But sometimes our purpose is somehow to serve. And sometimes we serve, but it's not our purpose. We might serve in some way because it's like, oh, I'm really good at it, or this is just what I know, or whatever the reason is. And so we're offering service, but it's not necessarily what we are here to do, or because we haven't aligned with who we are on a soul level, then that service may just feel heavy. And it may not feel like it's what you truly want. So I want to go back to that place of desire. So your gifts are what you inherently came in with. Your talents are things that you're just good at. And sometimes your talents will lead you to a job, and you can be good at that job. but it's your gifts that are going to hold space for that greater service. So is that clear? I'm just trying to be really careful and precise with the words. So I'm going to go back and answer some questions. So how do you stop taking on someone else's sadness? So at the very beginning of this class, we did a little bit of a shield. So one of the things to recognize is when you are naturally sort of in this place of openness, and oftentimes it's either coming from the heart because you just love people and you're really connected to people. And the other place it's coming from is more like the second chakra, which is sort of this place of wanting to help and wanting to serve. And there's this emotional place. And oftentimes our own emotions are already slightly maybe sad. And then what happens is we feel someone else's sadness and then it just amplifies, right? So one way to start to shield that is to do an imagination of a shield. And it could be like what I guided us through at the beginning. It can be a visualization of some kind of a shield around you. It can be a sound if you want to make a tone. So whatever that is, you can change it up according to different situations and different people, but it's to start to really pull in your own emotions and pull in your own energy body. So it's within that shield. So you're not having these little tentacles out there feeling other people's stuff. So to pull them in. And then the other is with that shield to recognize that it is ultimately everybody else's responsibility to take care of their own. So it's not about like, oh, I don't help other people, right? But it's like, it's not my job to fix other people. It's not my job to try to unconsciously transmute their feelings, right? But rather to start to separate what's mine and theirs. And oftentimes you can even place your hands on your lower belly or on your heart and kind of feel when somebody else's pain or when something's going on. It's like, is this mine? Is this mine? And if it's yours, then absolutely you can start to work with it. But if it's not, it's like, And so one time when my son was little, he was probably 10 or 11 or something, and he was having a meltdown, and my daughter called. I was probably here at the office, and she said, oh, he's having a fit and blah, blah, blah. And one way to help him kind of calm down, I recognized, was to depress the center of the palm. And he had a lot of crystal balls at the time. And so I had him take the crystal ball and press that crystal ball into the carpet as I was on the phone with him. I said, just press, 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 because I was trying to get him to depress that to kind of help relieve some of the stress in his body. And then I asked him, whose anger is this? Whose is this? And he recognized it was his dad's, my husband's, because my husband was not in a good place at that time. And so once you are able to identify whose it is, it helps unlock it a little bit, release a little bit. And then at that point, because he was a child and children so want to heal their parents, I said, your dad has his angels, give it to daddy's angels. Daddy's angels will work with him, right? So as an adult, we are more cognizant of this. And so it's like, these people that I'm wanting to help, they have guides that are way bigger than me. They have their entire entourage team that is far more, omnipotent and can see more and do more for them. And so my work is to be their friend and hold space for them, but not to absorb or take on. Let's see. Yes. So you can have lots of traits. All of my clairs are pretty much open. I wouldn't say the clair gustance, which is the smelling, not so much, but everything else is pretty wide open. And the more you practice, like any skill, it gets better. And how does one uncover the purpose of their soul? So the key is to really start to come into your truth, recognize where you are empowered, and start to align with joy. So that's a great question. So again, element number one is remembering who you are. So the truth is you are, God incarnate. The truth is you are inherently worthy, right? So the more you start to remember and own that, it becomes easier to align with that purpose, to get clarity of purpose. your power is, again, when there's somebody else's energy in your field. And we're going to go through this, this is later on in one of the other steps when I talk about, I can even go back, when we talk about let go, or, separate from unsupportive patterns, when you want to start to say, okay, what's mine and what's not mine, what situations are not supporting me, that these are practices that you need to start to implement that helps you move toward your own empowerment by recognizing, where am I empowered? Where are my choices? What is my next step in this, right? So this is a process, and that's why it's rise, not, overnight kind of a thing. And this, for many people takes years, right? And at the same time, we are awakening extremely quickly. So it's not like, you have to fret over it. It's like you're always exactly where you need it to be. And then, of course, aligning with your joy. When we are in alignment with our joy, when we are in this high state of joy, and I don't mean happiness and pleasure and, oh, this person, he really makes me happy, or I really like doing this, those are lovely, but we can find this essence of joy in anything. And the more pure the joy, the higher the vibration. So if being around people that you love brings you joy, then these are the people that you want to continue to be around. If sitting in nature makes your heart open, then that's the place you want to bring your awareness and attention to, right? And so it's beginning to ask and explore what brings you joy. And what I will say, this is, again, not to be crude or downplay anything, but I lost my husband and my mother 10 days apart. It was the most agonizing, time. And both were terminal illnesses, both separate illnesses, both, kind of jokingly, because I can joke about things like this. It's like they were so competitive. They were racing to the finish line, right? And so, but being with them in my home, each of them in my home, and having them go through that process of death was the most profound experiences to be part of. And in essence, the essence of being in that, as hard and horrible and sad as it was, also, there was the essence of joy. So joy is not necessarily about creating things that we like, or that we, that we're trying to get filled with, right? It's a state of being. And the higher we allow that state of being, the more we tap into that place of pure joy, the more we start to see and recognize that sense of purpose. So again, I'll pause here for any questions. If you can either chat it, or you can unmute yourself, raise your hand. And again, just give me, because it is hard with all of these different people, thumbs up if you are understanding, if it's all making sense, if it's okay. Go ahead, Justin, you can unmute yourself.
I just felt called to share something with you. Back in '99, I was ejected from a car and I ripped a main artery, and they said I should have died in 30 to 40 seconds. And in that time, I experienced leaving my body, and it was nothing like what I expected. There was no visual, no audible, but it was what I can only describe as safety, security, peace, love, gratitude, and connection, but 1,000 times more than anything I've ever felt inside of my body. And I hope that you're able to carry some of that with you when you think of your mom and your husband.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And being at the threshold of death, or being a witness to it, especially, with as close as I was to my husband and my mom, it's like there's this pureness of that transition, and it reminded me so much, honestly, of birth. He was with me when, when I gave birth to all four of our children, right? And so for me to be there, it was like, wow, it was the same experience, but not, right? It was very fascinating. So yes. Yeah, any other questions or anything from any clarification? All right. So in terms of guidelines for returning to alignment, what I'm seeing is that so many people are, we're all so unique and so incredibly gifted that there is no one method. And I, for one, am not the best at actual meditation, but if somebody guides me into a creative visualization or some kind of meditative state, I can go there because I've been doing it basically my whole life. But sitting in this place of Om or quietude is not my thing. My mother was an interfaith ordained minister, and she absolutely loved meditation. She would do like sit-a-thon meditations, like all weekend long. And she also loved ritual. But for me, it's like, it feels a little structured. With that being said, that is one way though, whether it's a walking meditation, being in nature, those are ways to help bring you in alignment. The other is you could do breath work. So again, these are things you can Google or find practitioners. So it's really coming into the present. And again, I'll bring up my son. He absolutely loves The Power of Now, the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's his Bible. And really it's that coming into presence that can bring us into this state of alignment. So prayer, meditation, presence, right? Being in nature can help bring us in. What takes us out of alignment, if we were to say it that way, is stress, keeping overly busy, expecting too much of ourselves, pouring from our empty, pitchers, not filling our own basic needs, right? Those are ways that we find ourselves off. So you can either look at, where am I off? And how do I correct that? Like, oh, I'm overly busy. Stop being so busy, right? But you can also look for ways that in spite of all the stuff that we do to ourselves, coming in with some of these basic methods. So what I would say when it comes to purpose is to maybe just in the morning, do a little quiet meditation and ask, yourself, what is my purpose? And be open, just be absolutely open without an agenda. Because as soon as you have a hook or an idea or a thought or a should or an agenda, or I'll feel better about myself once I know, then it's going to get constricted. But if there's this openness of what is my purpose, and then maybe throughout the day, you start noticing things, right? So little things. Oh, here's a butterfly. Why did I notice this butterfly? And just feel it and let it be. So it's like this asking and then letting things be. Asking, noticing, and letting it be. So it's not this grasping. So those are some ways to help bring you back into alignment. So Thomas, did you have a question? And did you want to ask a question? Because I saw you raise your hand earlier, Thomas. Go ahead. You're unmuted. Did you want to ask a question? Okay, so I'm going to
find how to deal with that kind of environment.
It was breaking up. I think you're breaking up because you're frozen a little bit. And so it might be better to type because it's not.
How about now?
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, my environment changes a lot, so I don't have control. Things happen that always distract me from staying into my purpose and focus. So how do you suggest dealing with and finding and sticking to the purpose in that kind of environment?
Yes. So, I raised 4 kids, and my husband, in the meantime, during, we were together for 31 years, and there was about 6 years in there where he was literally having a nervous breakdown, and we separated. He was spinning out of control. And so my life was chaos, right? And I had like zero money. Like, I went on welfare. I had, it was just absolute everything you can imagine. And that was the time I started doing this work, because I ended up at a therapist's office with oh my gosh, my whole world's falling apart. And this was the energy in which it was that crisis that brought me to self. So what happens, or what I see, is oftentimes we're going to keep being busy. We're going to keep trying to avoid ourselves, and life's going to bring you back. It's either going to bring you back gently, or it's going to slam you back, right? And so the question is how can you start to carve out little bits of sacred time in your day? It doesn't have to be in meditation. It could be simply like, I'm going to commit to tuning in to my journal at night, and I'm just going to write down a couple of things that connect me to my higher self. It's creating that opening and that invitation. As long as we keep being distracted by everything that we think is super important, which it is. Raising 4 kids is important. Keeping them fed is important. Keeping sanity in my house was important. But at the same time, it's like it's coming back to the willingness, and that's going to be part 2, right? You renew your commitment. I mean, part 3, that's the next class, is renew your commitment. So for me, what that looked like was, no matter what was going on, I knew that I was here to continue my own awakening process, and that it could come through having a women's group I went to for free once a week. It could come through listening to chanting music. It could come through, me laying at night in my, bed and doing just a quick visualization of all my chakras. It was it was the open invitation from my heart to say, this really sucks. Everything's really hard, but show me, and I'm showing up, right? And that's really the intention. And so when you have that honest, true willingness, life will start to come back to you. That doesn't mean it will be easy. And that's the one thing I really want to be clear about. I am so not about, this is an easy path. Once you find this, it's all going to be, I'm like proof that it takes grit, and it takes determination and a huge willingness on your part to show up no matter what, and to give yourself permission to just check out when you can't just do anything, right? So it's that and both. And at the same time, you can't run from who you are. You can only hide it, but you really can't. And so the more you tap into and allow for yourself to be who you are, then that's when it starts to come in even easier. So I hope that answers. And I'll do a time check here. So I'll go back to the tools. So I will share again. I'll go to, because I don't know who was in here when I first shared, but really, when we, there we go. So tools can be articles, audios, videos. It could be connections with friends. It could be anything. But these resources I'm giving you, one is an interview about your purpose. So again, information, just information. I have so many articles that when you go to my website, click on any of these articles, you'll be in my blog, and at the top it'll say search. You pick a topic, and I've probably written about it, and it's all going to be related to all of this. This is what I do. This is who I am. And then in terms of your intuitive gifts, because this is like part of who we are. If you haven't already signed up for my mailing list, when you do, you get 2 gifts, and one of which is Awaken Your Intuition ebooklet. It's like 12 pages, and it's based on classes my mom and I taught together for many years. And also I offer an audio MP3 where I guide you to access your Akashic records. Now, it doesn't matter your human gig, because when you are aligned with your purpose, like I said, it comes through you no matter what. But many times we want to find a gig that supports the purpose. Okay. Doesn't mean that you can't do different things. You can't be who you are and go and, ride rodeo or whatever it is you do, because you're still going to be that channel of being through you no matter what. But when if your work is to help awaken the whole collective, be part of this collective awakening, then in some way you will probably find a gig that supports that, right? That supports that process so that you're not feeling split. Some people, though, like to have lots of different things going on. So when it comes to this gig of mine, I started working in the Akashic Records 17 years ago. And how that happened was my life was a mess. My husband and I were separated. I was a mother of 4. Everything was shit. And so I ended up in a therapist's office who happened to also be an intuitive. And she was, looking at me and she's like, honey, you're just like so awake. You need to be doing something. And then I'm like, okay, you have MFT behind your name, which stands for Marriage and Family Therapist, right? And all I have behind my name is MOM. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Right. And she's like, it doesn't matter. The initials or the little credentials, will help some people, but generally, basically, people are going to align with your vibration. People are going to be drawn to you and find you based on what you're bringing through in your vibration. And so her advice was, I don't care what you do, but do it quick. And so it was within a few weeks, I just talked to I was running a preschool out of my home at the time, because that's how I could make money and have my little babies home with me and blah, blah, blah. And I was sharing with one of the preschool moms, this whole, stuff. And she's like, oh, you should, have you ever thought about reading Akashic Records? And as soon as she said it, I could feel the resonance. And then she followed it up with, you already channel information anyway, you might as well get paid for it. And I'm like, okay. And so it was from that point that I flew out to Texas in April, because this was February of 2005, flew out to Texas because that was the only place I could find that was teaching about the records in April. And by October, I had this office. And so for the past nearly 17 years, I've been professionally doing this. But again, it's a gig, right? I don't need to access somebody's records to bring through who I am. It's just information, but it's really good energy frequency, yummy stuff. So in this free audio, I'm guiding you to your Akashic Records. And so you can tap into your own records and just start journaling and ask questions. It becomes a really yummy place to do some searching. So we are down to the last few minutes. I think I've covered everything. And again, I've probably not touched much at all, right? So any questions before we come to a close? So I'm going to share my screen one more time. So our next class is in 1 month. It is key element number 3, which is renewing your commitment, right? It's like, really saying yes to you. It's the 28th of March, 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific daylight time, because by next month we will be in daylight savings. If you use your little camera to scan this, it'll automatically take you to the scheduler. So you can take a look at that. And then the other thing I thought I would close with, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I'm going to go ahead and close this, is one of the things I've been doing is writing a lot of poetry. And so I just want to share this one and I'll read it. And this is called What You Should Know to Be an Ancient Soul on Planet Earth. The planet is dense and beautiful, usually in a state of paradox, but you know this, as paradox is. The people have forgotten, which is, of course, the point. But to remember, to see, you will be able to see and feel, witness, notice, delve into the human experience, Feel every aspect of it, but remember the strength of your soul. You will be lonely, indeed. It is in this that you will find yourself, rediscover that which you are. Play, lean into your gifts. Yes, they are gifts of magic. Use them, show others, honor, but not in seriousness. There is simply too much seriousness on planet Earth already, so you must remember to laugh. Vibration informs you. Know what you know. Enjoy doubt, then roll it over. It is simply doubt. Stay connected to your heart. Though the planet sparkles with beauty and kindness abounds, so too are the edges, sharp, unexpected, ready to puncture your heart, but only if you let it. Crawl if you must, but stay true to your earthly life, to your ancient soul. All answers reside there, but there is no need for questions. They will haunt you endlessly if you let them, a distraction from your knowing. And then there's the mystery. You mustn't forget the mystery. It is the life force unfolding itself with wonder and creation. Honor the mystery as its own emanation. Crystals and incense and ritual can be part of your life journey, but never mandatory. Nothing is mandatory, even your earth trip. It's merely an option, ancient soul. All is well. It will always be well, but planet Earth is a place to forget that. It's practically the ticket to enter. Here, now. It is your choice. Are you ready to enter? Ready to incarnate once again? Open your heart to the experience. Enter and forget. Agree to unworthiness. It is your challenge. And as you will see, it is a collective one. Humanity is shedding their collective belief in unworthiness, and you can hold the light of truth as you all reawaken to your inherent perfection. So I do want to honor anybody who needs to leave on time. And at the same time, if there are any last minute questions, we have just another minute. You can raise your hand or unmute or anything. Yeah. Go ahead, Thomas.
Thank you. That was a beautiful poem. My question is, being used to working on needs and under pressure, and how do I transition into and discover the desire and in order to live it and feel the joy?
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, no, great question. And I'm going to speak specifically to your energy. So this could be generic. And so maybe others will get, but I'm just going to speak because I'm feeling into your system here only because it's speaking. But basically, so you can use that pressure, like, when we imagine a diamond being created, it takes this pressure. So it's like, I do well under pressure. So what am I going to set up for myself that will allow me to create that which I'm wanting to bring through, right? And so instead of fighting against it and saying, I need to unhook from pressure, I need to stop being, putting pressure on myself, it's almost like been such a natural part of how you work. And oftentimes, if you imagine, it's because, let's say, you're this intense vibration. And so who you are is going to have this intensity. So what do you do with it? How do you play with it? And how do you form with it? So approach it with more of this wonder and gratitude rather than thinking of it as some kind of shortcoming. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Any other questions from anyone?
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And they could be kind of personal if you have any particular, like you wanted me to look at something too, like if there's something that was coming up for you, I'm willing to look at that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Anybody else? Are we feeling pretty complete here? All righty. Janine, did you have a question? No. All righty. So it was a pleasure. I hope to see you next month. If you didn't add yourself to my mailing list, go to my website and do so, veronicalee.tv. And then, like I said, you will get the ebook about your intuitive gifts as well as the audio to guide you. And then you will be informed of when the next one of these is in March. So I hope to see you next time. And if you need to email me for any reason and want to connect afterwards, my email is veronica@veronicalee.tv. All right. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.